And this is now the best dungeon to farm if you want to level up fast in Diablo 4. Because Blizzard has once again nerfed a bunch of dungeons in Diablo 4, so I've once again tested many of the dungeons to see which ones are the best currently. And this one's performing way above average. Now I'm going to show you the loot results and the experience results of this dungeon, and then I'll show you the farming method afterwards. After farming the dungeon several times, on World Tier 3, I was averaging 300,000 experience per run and 600,000 experience per run on World Tier 4. I know this is less than the 800,000 experience we were getting last patch, but it's currently the best we have because Blizzard's plan is to really nerf every single dungeon, and all dungeons have already been nerfed to quite a similar level, but there are some that are still on top. I feel like there's always going to be the best farming dungeon. It will take most average players several minutes to clear this dungeon, but if you're optimized, you can do it in free. As for the loot I've been getting, there's an above average amount of legendaries dropping in this dungeon. This was the loot we got from the first clear. We got 1 legendary. So we actually got less loot the second time around, but we did end up with 3 legendary. So after the third run here, we have a full inventory of loot. We have 3 legendaries, and this was the second lot of loot I got from that same dungeon. And on the fourth run, we got no legendaries, but not as good as the Dungeon of Eridu, which I covered in my last video. I'll link that video down below in the description. And while the loot is better, the experience you get is now less. Next, I'm going to be showing you the location of the dungeon and my farming method, but I'm also going to be pinning a comment below. So if this dungeon gets patched or nerfed, I'll update that comment on a daily basis to let you know what's going on. So from Kiovishad right here on the map, you're going to come all the way to the left-hand side over here to Kyrgyzstan in the ragged coastline zone. And just here next to the coast, you'll find a waypoint called Iron Wolves Encampment. And then to the southwest of the encampment, just here on the map, you'll find Aldal's Cave. It will just take you a couple of minutes to ride over here. To get to the dungeon itself, you can just climb up the stairs here and then go inside. So the dungeon is going to have a similar layout each time. Essentially, you're going to come in from the entrance just here. You'll follow the dungeon into a figure of 8 where you can kill all the mobs. And then you'll come down a longer corridor into another sort of loop. And most of the elites and mobs are going to be focused towards the end of the dungeon. And for that reason, on this particular dungeon, the most efficient XP farm method is to be clearing the entire thing. So after we come inside the dungeon, the farming method itself is really easy. As you can see, our quest is to destroy the 3 barricades. And you'll see these barricades marked on your map. And when you get to them, they look exactly like this. You'll find a bunch of enemies behind them as well. You're also normally going to find a different event in here each time you come in, or a cursed chest, which also rewards you with more experience and some extra loot too. Make sure you always use the blood fonts, by the way, because sometimes they can be cursed and you basically just end up with more enemies to kill and more elites to kill, like you're seeing right now. So it gives you even more experience if this happens. And you really want to go and kill all these enemies because sometimes they can just spawn on top of you after you kill a bunch of enemies. So we've cleared the entire dungeon here, and as you can see, it's a pretty linear path with just a few circles of 8. So you're pretty much always going to be continuously clearing enemies and not wasting time backtracking or anything. Now, in order to reset the dungeon, if you're a solo player, this is what you need to do. You're going to press E to open up the emote wheel, and then we're going to scroll with our mouse wheel and then click on Leave Dungeon. After you leave the dungeon, go ahead and leave the game afterwards. Then go ahead and start game, logging back in. And then if we just re-enter the dungeon, you can see it says destroy the 3 barricades again. And if we look on the map, everything's reset and we can just farm all the mobs in here repeatedly. Now, if you are in a group, what you need to do, get the group members to leave the party, then the party leader needs to leave the dungeon and re-enter solo, and then just invite everyone and everything's respawned. Now, weirdly, there is another farming method that may actually become better than farming dungeon. I'll link this video just here, but it basically relies on going into strongholds and resetting them and just killing loads of trash mobs. Check that video out here, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.